Yo, what is up guys? In this video I try to beat Cuphead but with only 3 lives. Although Cuphead's a pretty short game, it took me a while to complete. Probably because the game is very difficult. And in this video I'm going to try to beat all the bosses without dying 3 times. Now let's explain the rules of this challenge. Firstly, I'll be playing on an already completed save file. This means I don't have to do any run-and guns, and I'm able to use any weapons or charms that I like. In order to win, I just need to beat all of the bosses without dying 3 times. Without further ado, let's get started with the challenge. After starting the challenge, I put up the good old roundabout and spread combo. This combo's good for a lot of bosses, including the first ones I would fight today. The first boss we would be fighting today is what many consider the first boss of the game, the Root Pack. Despite this being the first boss and probably the easiest in the game, new players will still find it challenging. I wasn't used to the controls and I was worried my skills would be a bit rusty after not playing for so long. However, it turned out that I still retained a lot of muscle memory and ended up hitting some nice parries. The first phase was a bit shorter than I expected, and I ended up completely wasting my super. On the second phase, not much happened. I was just spamming the onion the whole time. The third phase made things slightly trickier, but I still had full health, so I was chilling. However, the challenge would only get harder from here. The second boss we would be fighting was Goopy Legrand. This fight was a cakewalk, but I discovered it can be even easier if you have Smoke Bomb equipped. With Smoke Bomb you can just stand still and dash away right before you get smashed. And soon, Goopy Legrand was no more. Next it was time for the first airplane fight of the game, Hildeberg. This boss was definitely going to be harder than the last 2 bosses we just fought. Hildeberg is probably one of the most common bosses for new players to get stuck on. Now, I'm no new player, I've beaten the game before, and I know I can beat this boss. But the question is, can I complete it in under 3 lives? I probably can, but even if I only lose 1 life, that will still affect me for the rest of the run. The first few phases of the fight weren't that bad. However, Hildeberg eventually turned into some Cupid crossbow dude and got me with their first arrow. This was my first death of the run. I would have to be much more careful now if I was going to win this challenge. I switched my charm to double heart so I would have extra health to help me defeat Hilda. However, it turned out I didn't really need that extra health. This time I was able to beat the archer, and with 4 HP to spare. Soon, I approached the last phase of the fight. With Hilda sending UFOs at me and stars launching across the screen, my extra 4 HP would come in handy. With Hilda gone, there were only 2 more bosses left in Inkwell Isle 1. Now it was time to face Ribby and Croaks. As soon as I started the battle, I realized I already forgot something, so I went back to the map. Since I didn't take any damage yet, and Ribby didn't even attack yet, this doesn't count as losing a life. Since I now had Smoke Bomb re-equipped, I was now ready to crank 90s on these frogs. Not much happened during the first phase. However, I did make the unwise decision of using my super here. I probably should have saved that for phase 2. This phase was definitely harder than the first one. However, I somehow managed to beat it without taking damage. I wasn't out of the woods yet though. I still had 1 phase to go and it was the hardest one yet. Whoa. Okay. I would not like to die in the final phase. Things were starting to get tricky and I almost died many times. Okay. I may have messed up. How am I gonna land? Okay, I was 1 HP that time. I was 1 HP that whole time? That was a little scary. Now it was time for Cagney Carnation, the last boss of Inkwell Isle 1. Cagney is usually considered one of the easier bosses, so I didn't think it would be too bad. Right off the bat, I already forgot to parry the pink seed, This summons a flying enemy that is very hard to deal with. So in other words, I already messed up. And by this point, I was already at 1 HP. This was not good. I didn't want that flying enemy spawning again, so I tried to parry the pink seed. But I was down to my last life. If I die again, I lose the challenge. This time, I made sure to parry the pink seed. That way, I would not be dealing with the flying enemy. I was much more careful this time, and I got to the second phase. Ironically, the second phase was easier than the first. Cagny Carnation only had 2 attacks this phase, spitting dandelion things at me and making vines rise from the ground. Soon, this flower was no longer in power. Let's go. Okay, we're making it to Isle 2, guys. With Cagny Carnation defeated, it was finally time to venture to the second island. The first boss we would fight on this island was Baroness von Bonbon. I switched up my loadout a bit to help with her final phase. This boss is special and works off an RNG system. You have a chance of getting one of 3 different mini-bosses each phase. As you can see, the first mini-boss I got here was this goofy gumball dude. It didn't take too long to kill him, but each mini-boss gets harder than the last because you'll have these jelly bean dudes running across the bottom of the screen. I was doing pretty good so far, but things began to fall apart on the Cupcake mini-boss. By the time the phase ended, I was already down to 1 HP. To make matters worse, I was on my last life, so if I die now, I fail the challenge. Okay? Her floating head is so hard to dodge. And you have to be on the platform to actually do damage. Okay, we're using crack shot now, just so our shots all hit her. There's no way! The next boss I fought was Beppy the Clown. For this one, I made sure to switch back to my Roundabout and Spread loadout. Roundabout was very helpful for the first phase, while Spread would come in handy in the later phases. During the last phase, I accidentally fell on the roller coaster, leaving me at 1 HP. Luckily, I was able to defeat Beppy with my super. After fighting Beppy, I switched my charm back to Twin Heart. This was because the next boss was an airplane fight. To Jimmy the Great. This boss has the most phases in the game, except for King Dice or something. Despite me struggling a lot with this boss when I first played the game, this boss felt much easier now despite me having limited lives. I beat Djimmi with 2 HP to spare, which may sound good, however considering I started the fight with 5 HP, that means I lost over half my health. I now had a choice between 2 challenging bosses, Wally Warbles or Grim Matchstick. I was trying to go by the list, so I ended up choosing to fight Grim Matchstick first. Grim was one of the hardest bosses in the game. This would be my toughest challenge yet. For the first time this video, I had Charge equipped. I find this what am I yapping about? I find Charge really useful for this first phase with Grim. However, most players prefer Lobber. Okay, it's time for the next phase. Uh-oh, okay, there's these little fire dudes at the bottom that make it... Oh, I should start using crack shot now, that way you can always hit them. Always do consistent damage, we're at 1 HP. It was at this moment I realized that I was quite literally cooked. Because of Grim Matchstick's fire breath, but yeah, I was cooked. We sold, guys. We're out of lives. Unfortunately, this is where the challenge comes to an end. That was our last life. We have officially failed the challenge, which I expected to happen. There was no way I was going to beat the full game with only 3 lives, and I'm actually surprised that I made it this far. I was expecting to die way earlier in the game. It's crazy that we made it all the way to Grim Matchstick with only 3 lives, because this is a pretty hard game. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I might make a part 2 where I play the game on a new save file without any weapons except the default one, and I have to beat the game with 3 lives from the actual very start of the game. Not just bosses, but run and guns too. So yeah, if you guys want to see that, let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching and have a wonderful day.